So let me first start by thanking the Honorable Prime Minister, the Leader of the House, Shri Jagat Prakash Nadda, my party, and you, the Honorable Chairman, for giving me this opportunity to speak in this discussion marking the historic occasion of 75 years of our Constitution. I feel very honored and equally I feel humbled that this opportunity has been given to me. I thank the entire House and seek your indulgence if I come up with some thoughts which I'd like to share, which any member could have a difference of opinion. But I start again by paying homage to all the 389 members of the Constituent Assembly, in particular the 15 women who, in less than 3 years together, took up the arduous challenge and prepared in a very challenging environment the Constitution for India, and which has stood the test of time. Until today, we are extremely proud of the way India's democracy is growing. As we mark the 75th year of our Constitution, sir, it is time, I would think, to reaffirm our commitment to build India, that is Bharat, that shall uphold the spirit enshrined in this sacred document. So with those words, I get into telling about the journey that these 75 years have seen of our Indian Constitution, and also to say why India's Constitution and India today stands out in a very separate league of its own. Sir, let me just remind, and I'm sure very many members of this House will know, that post-Second World War, nearly 50 countries, in fact over 50 countries, had become independent and they had their constitution written, but many have changed their constitutions, not just amended them, but literally changed the entire feature of their constitution. But our Constitution has stood the test of time, of course yielded itself to very many amendments, and here therefore I would like to have a few words of what Constitution India expert Dr. Subhash Kashyap had to say. While many constitutions of nations framed after the Second World War have floundered and gone into oblivion, our Constitution successfully faced many crises and survived. This itself is evidence of its resilience, dynamism, and growth potential. Now, India's experience has shown that our Constitution remains robust, yielding to several amendments, as I said, which were the need of the hour. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chairman of the drafting committee, had said, and I quote, "I feel, however good a constitution may be, it is sure to turn out bad because those who are called to work it happen to be a bad lot. However bad a constitution may be, it may turn out to be good if those who are called to work it happen to be a good lot." Unquote. These are words of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, sir. And in this background, therefore, with those words right afresh in our mind, I'd like to discuss about how in the last 7 decades, the living document that our Constitution is has faced very many amendments. And while looking at those amendments, I'd like to have a touchstone of 4 different elements. One, has the social intent behind any amendment been genuine? And therefore the outcome has been genuine? That's one test I would like to place any amendment on the testing board. Second, I'd like to see if the economic intent and the economic outcome of any constitutional amendment has actually been bona fide and has the outcome helped the society at large. Third, I'd like to test it on the ground of process adopted for it, for the amendment itself. And fourth, the constitutional spirit behind such an amendment. Now, if an amendment can go through these kind of tests, we'll be able to see why India's constitution, going by the words of Dr. Ambedkar, if you had good people who are called to work on it, give good outcomes. If you have, I'm using Ambedkar's words, sir, bad people who are brought to work on it happen to give such outcomes which are discussed. So if I move to talking about those amendments which have gone through these 4 tests, we'll be able to see how the intent and the outcome are justifiable, and people in the history books do write about them. Sequentially, because it is the first ever amendment, I'd like to take about the first Constitutional Amendment Act of 1951. Sir, it's been said, and Honorable Prime Minister, while talking in the Lok Sabha, also referred to the fact that there was an interim government in place between 1947, August 15th. The interim government was there before that as well. And it lasted till 17th April 1952, post which an elected government took over the charge. But during 1951, when the amendment for the first Constitutional Amendment Act was passed, it was an interim government and not elected government of India post 1947. Now, this was enacted, therefore, within a year of the commencement of the Constitution. It's worth remembering. In fact, on the issues related to the amendment, or which triggered the amendment itself, which is the freedom of speech and expression, the amendment added 3 more heads to Article 19(2), saying public order could be a cause to restrict freedom of speech, friendly relations with foreign states could be a cause to restrict freedom of speech, or incitement to an offense could also be a cause. These were the amendments brought in the first Constitutional Amendment. Sir, the Supreme Court of India, even in 1950, 1 year before this amendment, had passed 2 landmark judgments that paved the way for freedom of press under Article 19(1)(a). The Supreme Court had ruled in favor of the communist magazine Crossroads and the RSS's organizational magazine Organizer. The Supreme Court had ruled in favor of them in 1950. Many high courts also upheld the freedom of expression of our citizens and ruled in their favor. But in response, the interim government thought that there was a need for a first constitutional amendment, and that was brought in by the INC, and it was essentially to curb the freedom. So India, a democratic country, which prides itself even today about freedom of expression, saw the first interim government coming up with a constitutional amendment which was to curb the freedom of speech of Indians. And that is within 1 year of adoption of the Constitution. So, let me say, sir, that is because the first Prime Minister of this country deplored press scrutiny of his government, even as he publicly praised freedom of the press. There was no doubt about it. And he had scrutinized the amending bill himself before approving its introduction in the Parliament. In the Parliament, sir, it didn't go through smoothly at all. The voices which spoke about it, and I will also refer some of the observations made by eminent members, vehemently who opposed it. Sri Shyama Prasad Mukherjee said, you can pass a law, I'm quoting, sir, you can pass a law and say that the entire task of framing, interpreting, and working the Constitution will be left in the hands of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, assisted by such people whom he may desire to consult. I would think it was a snide remark, saying, oh, you do it all yourself with the people who you choose to have and not with the approval of the Parliament. That was the extent to which Pandit Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was upset about this amendment. Sir, he also said, you're treating this Constitution as a scrap of paper. You have declared preamble of your Constitution that you have done something unheard of in history, that within so short a period of attainment of freedom, you have trusted the people of this country to draft a Constitution. You have given a charter of rights to them. Now, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee says, now you come forward and stab them in the back. You're not working for the benefit of the present generation, but for party ends. But for party ends, unquote. Sir Sri Kameshwar Singh, a member of the Constituent Assembly, also had a lot of comments to pass, and he said, I quote, this Parliament, again, is a provisional one, and it cannot be said to be reflecting the will of the people in the way the Constitution wants Parliament to reflect it. For a government or a Parliament of this kind, it is highly improper to make such fundamental changes in the Constitution without making any reference to public opinion, and that too at the fag end of the strenuous parliamentary session and almost on the eve of a general election, unquote. So scathing remarks were made, and despite these remarks, Prime Minister Nehru went ahead with the amendment. Kameshwar Singh again goes about to say, do they not show, I quote, do they not show utter disregard for the Constitution when they attempt to amend it simply because some of the laws have been criticized and found invalid by the judiciary? Today we hear comments from the Indian National Congress about how the current government is questioning the judiciary. This comment coming from a member of the Constituent Assembly itself says, prior to the First Amendment to the Constitution, which curtailed freedom of expression. The Prime Minister, he furthers, the Prime Minister, I'm constrained to say, that is Sri Kameshwar Singh, the Prime Minister, I'm constrained to say, is creating a bad precedent by sowing the seed of executive despotism, and playing with the supremacy of the Constitution for party advantages, unquote. So there was no doubt this amendment was more raised for the sake of the party or the Prime Minister and the government's image, rather than assuring what the Constituent Assembly had suggested as the Constitution which was going to be adopted. An amendment bill was passed, the Press Objectionable Matter Act, on 23rd October 1951. We know, therefore, the amendment, the intent, the four tests that I was talking about: social impact and intent, economic impact and intent, the constitutional spirit, and the process adopted for the amendment, all of which are questionable, but nevertheless that amendment was undertaken, and we heard how that amendment till today affects the freedom of speech of this country. Now, it is not as if this 1951 amendment happened all in a sudden. Prior to the amendment and post the amendment, we've had recorded action taken by those government that day, that particular government, in curtailing the freedom of speech. So the act was just waiting to happen, because even before it they started it, and even after that they were continuing. What are the examples, sir? Majroor Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahani were both jailed in 1949 itself. For what mistakes, sir? During one of the meetings organized for the mill workers in 1949, Majroor Sultanpuri recited a poem that was written against Jawaharlal Nehru, and therefore he had to go to the jail. Sir, he refused to render an apology for the same and was jailed therefore in 1949 along with Balraj Sahni, eminent actor of those days. So that is the level of tolerance, and today we hold our constitution in our hand, go about it and say freedom of speech. There is sense of fear in the country. Majroor Sultanpuri didn't feel it, Balraj Sahni didn't feel it, but the history repeats when it comes to the Congress party. Sir, Congress's record of curtailing freedom of speech didn't confine it with these two people. Nehru, a political biography which was written by Michael Edwards, in 1975 was banned. They banned also a film called Kissa Kursi Ka in 1975, which was directed by Amritlal Nahata, just because it questioned Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and her son, and also the Information Broadcasting Minister then. They banned also John Dalby's book, Himalayan Blunder, because it spoke about some huge crushing military disaster which happened in 1962, the China War. The details shouldn't come out, and therefore they banned that book as well. So this, and a bit later, 1988, Salman Rushdie's book, Satanic Verses, was also banned. So the spree of curtailing the freedom of expression, the spree of containing freedom of press has happened before 49, and during 49 and 50, 51 the act comes, and subsequently also it continues. So it's nothing new. So the amendment, again, a second issue that I'd like to draw your attention to. I said I'm putting it through 4 tests. A 9th schedule was brought into through the first Constitutional Amendment Act. The 9th schedule, sir, is an interesting innovation brought for bypassing judicial review. Why was it brought in? I'm questioning the intent, sir, the constitutional spirit which is not being respected, and the process which is adopted are part of the test I want every amendment to be put to, so that you know whether it is done with the national interest, or is it done with some economic public good, or if it is brought in because there is a social large good which is required to be obtained. No, the 9th schedule was brought in only because they wanted to bypass judicial scrutiny. Any act incorporated in the 9th schedule became fully protected against any challenge in any court of law under any fundamental right. So even the act declared invalid. Even worse, today about everything retrospective we talk, saying no, nothing can happen in retrospective, it has to be futuristic. So prospective is what? Whether it is taxation, whether it is benefits, whether it is any clarificatory note. But here we go, the act declared invalid by a court becomes valid retrospectively after being incorporated into the 9th schedule. That's the extent to which they went, so that they can bypass judicial scrutiny. And Congress speaks about protecting rights and also on judicial independence, sir. It is shocking. Yes, we'll come. I'll come.
Please,
sir.
Jaramji, take your question.
The third point, sir.
Please. अच्छी डिबेट चल रही है, सुनिए, आपका जब समय आएगा बोलिएगा, प्लीज।
SC, ST, OBC, come on, people who sat over Kelkar. Sir, the next instance which I would like to put through is amendment being enacted to, again, the judiciary was held in contempt. They had to be committed judiciary, or else they were not respected at all. Another example, sir. Constitutional amendment was brought in to nullify a judgment that arose in the case of Mrs. Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, wherein the order of the Allahabad High Court setting aside the election of Indira Gandhi was challenged. So, during the pendency of this case in the Supreme Court, the Congress party enacted the 39th Constitutional Amendment Act in 1975. Again, earlier there is a Supreme Court and many other high courts have given clearance, but even then we'll curb freedom of speech, 1951, the First Amendment. Here, a case is pending. Mrs. Indira Gandhi's case is being heard in the court, Allahabad High Court. But no, we are in a hurry. What if the court comes against me? So I come up with an amendment, 39th Constitutional Amendment Act, 1975. Again, valid retrospectively, which added Article 392A to the Constitution. What did it say? It said elections to the President, Vice President, Prime Minister and Lok Sabha Speaker cannot be challenged in any court in the country, and it can be done only before a parliamentary committee. Imagine the extent to which for a person to save her chair, इसीलिए किस्सा कुर्सी का was banned. कुर्सी बचाने के लिए कोर्ट का वर्डिक्ट आने से पहले ही हम जाकर के अमेंडमेंट करेंगे पार्लियामेंट में. यही है इनके इतने दूर तक जाने वाले विषय. कानून को दुरुपयोग करना, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट करवाना देश के हित में नहीं है, प्रोसेस सही नहीं होता, इससे आर्थिक सुधार कुछ होने वाले नहीं है या सामाजिक सुधार भी कुछ होने वाले नहीं है. व्यक्तिगत और परिवारवाद के लिए ही अमेंडमेंट हुआ है. सर, मैं दूसरी और एक उदाहरण देना चाहती हूं. एक और उदाहरण देना चाहती हूं जिससे सामाजिक सुधार के लिए अगर कोर्ट से एक ऑर्डर आता है उसको भी, क्योंकि हमारे राजनीति के लिए वो उचित नहीं है, इसीलिए सामाजिक न्याय दिलाने वाले कोर्ट के आदेश के खिलाफ आकर के अमेंडमेंट कानून को करते हो हाउस में. इससे बढ़िया उदाहरण नहीं मिलेगा सर शाहबानू बेगम केस में, जहां सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने उस महिला को न्याय दिलाने के लिए, एलिमनी देने के लिए, डाइवर्स के बाद जो पैसा मिलना चाहिए वो दिलाने के लिए कोर्ट से जो आदेश आए, द कांग्रेस पार्टी पास्ड द मुस्लिम विमेन प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ राइट्स ऑन डाइवर्स Act 1986, which denied, it's very important, it denied Muslim women their right to alimony. सामाजिक न्याय, महिला के लिए न्याय मिलना नहीं चाहिए, चाहे वो कोर्ट में से आता है या कुछ और जगह से आता है, हम कानून से उनको नकार देंगे. महिला सम्मान नारी शक्ति बंधन अधिनियम ले आने वाले हमारे पार्टी इधर है. इस सदन में पहला कानून जो पास हुआ वो रिजर्वेशन फॉर विमेन सर, whereas the small benefit a widowed woman would have, a divorced Muslim woman would have got, was also defeated by this act. The constitutional amendment which the Congress party brought in 1986. So my test again, sir, neither samajik nyay, nor arthik nyay, nor the process, nor the constitutional spirit, nothing of this was respected. And each time the Congress brazenly, only to help the family, the dynasty, kept amending the constitution, and this is how far they went, even if it affects any particular women who desperately needed the benefit. Sir, I'll come again to one more, the emergency, where that one important touchstone, the process, was completely violated. On 18th December 1976, the then President gave his assent to the Constitution 42nd Amendment Act. During the emergency, when the term of the Lok Sabha was extended without proper justification, they invoked the law to say Parliament has to be in session for 5 years, but we needed to have 1 extra year, so the act was extended. The Lok Sabha term was extended. And in that extended term, when the entire opposition was put to jail, there was nobody there. And entire opposition was in the jail. Then comes constitutional amendment, sir. The process, the touchstone that we need to have, is the process valid? That was a total invalidated process, and therefore I would think this is a blatant abuse which the country majorly agreed on. Sir, only 5 members opposed the bill in the Lok Sabha. There was none in the opposition in the Rajya Sabha to oppose it. Imagine, constitutional amendment being passed, entire opposition in the jail. In the Lok Sabha, only 5 people are there to oppose it, even some coming from their own party. And in the Rajya Sabha, no opposition. But constitutional amendment changing the preamble itself happens. The alteration of the preamble to include socialist and secular highlights the disrespect and disregard the Congress has for constitutional processes, principles and institutions. Sir, the amendments were not about strengthening democracy, sir, but protecting those in power. Again, the process is used for strengthening the family. Sir, Baba Saheb Ambedkar had argued, and I quote, talking about whether the word secularism, talking about whether the word socialism should be included in the Constitution. Baba Saheb Ambedkar argued, I quote, I do not see, therefore, why the Constitution should tie down the people to live in a particular form and not leave it to the people themselves to decide it for themselves, unquote. And therefore, in the original Constitution, the word socialism was not there, as much as the word secularism. So 21 MPs, all opposition, belonging to all opposition parties, were held in jail. Manya Advani ji, Manya Atal ji were all in jail under Preventive Detention Law, Maintenance of Internal Security Act 1971, the infamous MISA. And I know of political leaders who have chosen to have their children named after MISA to remember those black days. And now they wouldn't even mind having alliance with them. Sir, all these together turned the Constitution into a qualitatively different text from what it was originally as adopted in November 26. So I'd just like to come here for one observation. Opposition member, respected Jairam Rameshji, refers to the work of Granville Austin with a left-handed compliment saying, we read it, but does anyone in the ruling party read it? Sir, and he says, masterly book. Yes, masterly book. He tells the full story of the amendment carried out till 1980. So I'm starting from 51, and I'm also going on that journey, talking about amendments, their purpose, their intent, their process. Now, since Jairam Ramesh has mentioned it, and there is some Granville Austin's line that I like to quote back to him. Sir, emergency, 42nd Amendment Act, the landmark Keshwananda Bharati case of 1973, the basic structure, doctrine, whole lot of things. In the words of that masterly Granville Austin, I quote, sir, the important constitutional development of the emergency, other than its very imposition, was the enactment of the 42nd Amendment. Austin says this. And he further says, coming in November 1976, The amendment demonstrates the progression of the Prime Minister, referring to Mrs. Indira Gandhi. I really quote again. Coming in November 76, the amendment demonstrates the progression of the Prime Minister and her government from having near absolute power without a coherent program, other than the protection of her prime ministry to power expressed through fundamental constitutional change. So, unquote. Exactly the point that I'm putting forth about emergency, the way in which 42nd Amendment passed through, how opposition leaders were all in the jail, not one person to oppose in the Rajya Sabha, in the Lok Sabha, just 5 of them speaking against it. When Granville Austin has said this, poor Jairam Ramesh did not mind quoting something else from Austin, but ignored this. Point proves. So the selective.
प्लीज आप बैठ जाएं। माननीय शक्ति सिंह जी आप जगह लें प्लीज। माननीय जयराम रमेश जी।
I have Granville Austin in my hands right now, and the same Granville Austin writes that the 44th Amendment was passed by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha to override the 42nd Amendment, large parts of the 42nd Amendment. And who voted on the 7th of December 1978 to repeal parts of the 42nd Amendment? It was Indira Gandhi herself. So Indira Gandhi in 1978 voted to repeal the parts of the 42nd Amendment which she realized had resulted in her electoral loss. So it's not, don't read selectively.
Thank you, Jairam Ramesh. Please. Now, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, sir.
Please.
Thank you, sir.
You have responded. You have responded, please. 1978. Honorable Jairam Ramesh, please be brief. माननीय जयराम रमेश जी प्लीज बी ब्रीफ।
सर, मैं आदरणीय रमेश जी का ज्ञानवर्धन करना चाहता हूं कि 1978 में मोरारजी देसाई वाज द प्राइम मिनिस्टर। जनता पार्टी की सरकार थी और जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने 42nd अमेंडमेंट को 44th अमेंडमेंट से हटाने का काम किया और आपको जनता ने हरा दिया था। श्रीमती इंदिरा गांधी was no more the prime minister, and when she was the prime minister, तब उन्होंने हर तरीके से प्रजातंत्र को रोकने का, गला घोटने का काम श्रीमती गांधी ने किया था।
माननीय जयराम जी प्लीज।
मुझे सुना नहीं, मुझे ठीक तरीके से उन्होंने सुना नहीं। मैंने कहा था 44th अमेंडमेंट आया 1978 में, मोरारजी भाई प्रधानमंत्री थे और 6 दिसंबर 1978 में लोकसभा में इंदिरा गांधी जी ने वोट किया 44th अमेंडमेंट के लिए। यही तो मैंने कहा था।
ऑनरेबल मिनिस्टर प्लीज। माननीय मंत्री जी, सिर्फ माननीय मंत्री जी की बात रिकॉर्ड पे जाएगी प्लीज।
Thank you very much, sir, and I fully accept Jairam Ramesh's observation. Obviously, Leader of the House was right in saying Morarji Desai was the Prime Minister, and during the voting, Srimati Indira Gandhi had said that, and she supported the changes in the changes to the 42nd Amendment. Very well. But the idea that I have right from the beginning said, yes, Der Aya Durust Aya is what the Hindi language gives me, but the fact remains, and I'm glad that she changed her mind. It was such an improper thing to do during an extended tenure of the parliament, and an improper thing, even worse, to do, putting the opposition and then seeking a constitutional amendment. So at least in 78, after a massive defeat, which of course later she overturned and won the election and came, that's a process, that's an electoral process. That is the electoral process, and electoral process does teach lessons. does teach lessons, and Srimati Indira Gandhi learnt that lesson. I want to say this to the Congress party today. Srimati Indira Gandhi learnt the lesson, and I'm happy Jairam Ramesh says that she stood up to support the amendment Morarji Desai and his government was bringing. But today's Congress, sir, I'll come to that. Sir, today's Congress is the matter that we need to talk about. But before that, sir, the eminent person who became speaker later on, Shri Mavlankarji, also said some things. These are words which we need to have a recall, because it's important for all of us sitting in this august house to know what the opinions were, and then take the next 75, next 200, next 500 years forward of this constitution. Mavlankar says, sir, and I quote, "This particular bill brings an almost qualitative change in our constitution structure. The tragedy of the situation is that by this amendment bill, the citizens, the courts of law, the states, the president, and indeed even this House of Parliament are all sought to be denigrated, and only the union executive is sought to be made to thrive, grab, and aggrandize." Unquote. So if that one amendment has brought in such thinking individual to say such harsh words, it needs retrospection. We should never repeat such, great follies in which we took the constitution for granted. People rejected such people, and lessons have to be learned. So, sir, I'd like to again say, when I soon would want to speak about what's the attitude of Congress today, I'd like to come to one line of an eminent person which was said during the 42nd Amendment debate. He was no less than later on chief minister, or prior to that also, and a minister. But as a Congress MP, Sri C.M. Stephen, an eminent congressman. Yes, it might be useful to remember that also. I'll read the quote. It might be useful further. Sir C.M. Stephen, as a Congress MP at that time, says, during the debate of 42nd Amendment, which had so many implications. So it brings me the shivers to read this line, but I'm reading it because we should know how we speak. Quote, sir, I quote, "Now the power of this Parliament, through the 42nd Amendment that is declared to be out of bounds for any court." Shame. He says this. Now the power of this Parliament is declared to be out of bounds for any court. It is left to the courts whether they should defy it. He continues, "I do not know whether they will have the temerity to do that. But if they do, that will be a bad day for the judiciary. The committee of the House is sitting with regard to the inquiry into the conduct of judges. We have got our methods, our machinery." Unquote. Sir, imagine if today one of our MPs would say, anywhere, would say this and say the temerity of the judges, the courts, but no, what we hear from Congress today, oh, you are undermining institutions, you have no respect to the Constitution, you that, you this. Look at this one statement, sir. And during emergency, passing the 42nd Amendment, the attitude of Gamand, the Gamandiya Gadbadhan, even today, but then they spoke that, passing the 42nd Amendment. The people of India didn't forgive this, and that's why they lost miserably. When she conceded to change the amendment, na? Sir, all right, don't beg for concessions like that. All right? Sir, what is today's INC, sir? In the budget session 2022, मैं ये घमंड बदला नहीं है, कम नहीं हुआ, उसको साबित करना चाहती हूँ. Budget session 2022, sir. I'm not taking the name of the Congress leader who's not in this house, but I'm sure this statement will obviously ring a bell to everybody. The judiciary, I quote, the judiciary, the election commission, Pegasus, these are all instruments of destroying the voice of the Union of States, unquote. You heard CM Stephen then, and you just see the statements which are coming. Committed judiciary is what they wanted. The contempt for the judiciary and the constitutional bodies is not new now. And that term was used by one eminent congressman. And that eminent congressman, I'll take his name, sir, because I have to quote him, Shri Mohan Kumar Mangala. He had said that the government will appoint chief justices based on the government's assessment of their philosophy and outlook, telling the parliament in 1973, I quote, certainly, we as a government have a duty to take into consideration, I'm putting it in brackets, certainly, we as a government have a duty to take the philosophy, the outlook of the judge in coming to the conclusion whether he should or should not lead the Supreme Court at this time. I repeat this quote, sir. Certainly, we as a government have a duty to take the philosophy and the outlook of the judge in coming to the conclusion whether he should or should not lead the Supreme Court at this time, unquote. After the judgment on Keshwanand Bharati case, sir, you're an eminent senior who became a senior advocate at a very young age, and I stand before you talking small things about judiciary. Pardon me if I have any, oversight which has not worked well. A day after the historic judgment in April 25, 1973, in the Keshwanand Bharati case, in which the majority declared that the Parliament cannot alter or abridge the basic structure of the Constitution, Srimati Indira Gandhi was furious with the judgment because it constricted the party's plan to bring in major amendments. So the three judges, this is what I want to highlight, committed judiciary. If they are not there, we'll do what we want. So the three judges were accorded swift punishment via suppression on April 26, and Justice A.N. Ray, who did not subscribe to the majority decision, was elevated. After Ray retired in 77, again, Srimati Indira Gandhi government gave superseded the senior most candidate, Justice Hansraj Khanna, to appoint Justice Mirza Hamidullah Beg as the Chief Justice. So it is really sad that the test that I'm putting each one of these amendments, whether they was in line with the constitutional spirit, whether it was the process was followed, whether the large economic good was considered or social good was considered as an objective, none of them meet that. The OBC Commission is something which I want to in contrast mention. How our intent, Prime Minister Modi was clear. The OBC Commission will have to be set up, and constitutional amendments have to empower communities and not put them at a disadvantage. But therefore, the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act was brought in 2018 and inserted Article 338B. But what's the contrast, sir, with the Congress? In 1950, Kaka Kalekar Commission was formed, but Congress prevented its report from being published. Dr. Ambedkar was of the view that Pandit Nehru was not concerned about the welfare, was not concerned enough about the welfare of the SCs. I quote Baba Saheb Ambedkar, "From the very first election, we have been fighting against the Congress because it is unnecessarily interfering with our rights." Just see the leader of the Congress party, Pandit Nehru. He has delivered 2,000 speeches during the last 20 years but he has never spoken about the welfare of scheduled castes even once. This is Baba Saheb Ambedkar's words. So, from this, he further says, from this you can judge what sympathy the Congress party can have for our people when its leader is so much adamant. Unquote. Sir, this is said several times, but it's worth saying now. Congress did not even allow Baba Saheb's photo to be installed in the central hall of the old Parliament House for decades. He was, of course, denied Bharat Ratna. Similarly, the Mandal Commission was created to provide reservation for backward classes. But Mrs. Indira Gandhi or even Sri Rajiv Gandhi opposed it, delaying 27% reservation for the OBCs in central institutions. So we are the ones who brought it in, not the Congress. One more interest. One more instance of how the GST, which was again a constitutional amendment which has to be brought in. Sir, GST related constitutional provisions has never been encouraged prior to its bringing by Prime Minister Modi in 2017. Sir, this started very quickly to trace the timeline, sir. Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the first to suggest during the NDA rule in 2000 to get going with the GST. However, the sincere efforts that he made could not realize or could not see the light of the day. And the 10 years after his tenure, led by the UPA, did not much do to get it on board. Sir, within 2 years after the introduction in the Parliament of the GST-related 101st Constitutional Amendment Act was passed and ratified by more than 50 states with effect from 8th September 2016. Just the data will tell you, sir, where the Congress party was. Despite being a coalition comprising of 26 parties, the UPA could not manage to get this GST. Even Congress-ruled states were opposed for the GST to be brought in. 2012. I'll say that as well. I'll say that as well. That will also be said. 3 BJP-ruled states. 3 BJP-ruled states also opposed. I don't hide facts. 3 BJP-ruled states also opposed, including Gujarat. I'm saying that. Sir, I'm saying it, sir. I'm saying it myself that Gujarat opposed it. I'm saying it myself. अरे नंबूत्री बात गवर्नमेंट को सेव नहीं कर पाया कांग्रेस से, आप क्या खड़े हो रहे हो? कम्युनिस्ट है, बैठ जाओ. Sir, 3 non-BJP ruled states, sir. So I don't know. 3 non-BJP ruled states. I said about Gujarat, now I'm saying non-BJP ruled states, including Congress-ruled Maharashtra, opposed provisions of the UPA's GST. So if they want to first shout about Gujarat, I'm saying it myself. But please do shout about Maharashtra as well. No, they want to pretend they were all ready. They were not ready. Sir, Congress-led ruling UDF government, all right, in Kerala voiced severe concerns. Okay, sir, left front opposes, UDF opposes, Congress is part of the UDF, but no, they will never say that. One Gujarat is what they want to say. And I'll tell you why Gujarat had to oppose also. So, they could not bring the GST amendment. When we bring it, this is how they would like to shout about it. But I'm sorry. I'm not lying, sir. I'm sorry. I will have to demand a written apology from Shri Jairam Ramesh for accusing me of lying, which I never do. And whether it is parliamentary or unparliamentary, first of all, sir, the chair, I trust you will take care of that. But accusing me of lying is now very clear, runs in the Congress blood. Somebody had to go to the court to say sorry. When I was the defense minister, not only did they call Prime Minister Modi as a chore, but they kept calling me that I'm lying. And who had to go and apologize in the court? And now I wouldn't mind seeing another member going and apologizing in the court, although the word said in the parliament is never taken to the court. Sir, all MPs in the House, when the GST was brought in, and this is also something which the Congress will have to gulp if they can, all MPs present in the House, including those of the Congress, had voted for the GST constitutional amendment which was brought in by Prime Minister Modi. In fact, I wouldn't mind if Jairam Ramesh once again calls me that I'm lying, but records of the parliament will say it. Jairam Ramesh wanted to move some amendments, but Dr. Manmohan Singh personally asked him not to do so because of the fine consensus that has been arrived in the GST Council. Yes. Sir, I don't lie, records don't lie. Don't jump in a hurry to accuse me that I'm lying. Sir? I will authenticate it. But you authenticate that I'm lying, please.
Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, it's a fair comment by Jairam Ramesh. You need to authenticate it.
Yes.
And during the course of the day, when I watched the Lok Sabha debates, I frequently came across, please authenticate. It started in this House. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, sir. I will authenticate. And despite the support given by the Congress in passing the amendment, GST constitutional amendment, you have the Congress leader, again not taking name, goes about calling the GST a Gabbar Singh tax. Sir, and therefore, about amendments, I have said some words. Now I just want to highlight...
Minister, but if some Gabbar Singh comes and files a suit then?
Sir?
If some Gabbar Singh in the country comes forward,
oh, yes,
that I have been defamed then?
That's right, sir. And the problem, sir, when GST matters come, I will sometime again speak as much as I've done it earlier. Congress ministers are sitting and arguing about rates that they will not know. The GST Council, Congress finance ministers are also sitting and talking about it. So we are marking the Constitution 75th year. I want to just remind again something very, very quickly, sir. When 75 years of Indian independence was marked in 2022, Prime Minister Modi had celebrated it in the name of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Throughout the country, every state government participated. Every state government also picked up all the freedom fighters, known, unknown, all of them were celebrated, and there was a lot of discussion all over the country. And recently, sir, Prime Minister also spoke about the 11 oaths that we need to take in the Lok Sabha when he spoke. And in 2022, from the Red Fort, he had announced how Panch Pran, meaning we need to get out of that Gulami Mansikta. We have to get over that and look forward to building this country and taking it forward and so on. But 75 years of Indian independence, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of the Constitution, we are having these wonderful debates in the two houses. Every 25 or 50 years are celebrated, sir. I'd like to remind as to what was the celebration when in 25 years of Indian independence, what did we do? So I'm contrasting this. When the completion of the 25 years happened in 1973, sir, when in 1973, how was it celebrated, sir, 25 years of independence? There was a time capsule. A time capsule was interned, a Kal Patra was interned in the Red Fort. And at that time, the people were told this time capsule will be seen only after 5,000 years. And in that time capsule, the journey of India, free India, was all being written, and actually it was kept as a top secret. Nobody knew anything as to what was inside the time capsule. A professor of history was employed to write this India since 1947, marking the 25th anniversary. But it was kept a secret. Sir, questions were asked in the parliament. What exactly is in the time capsule marking 25 years of India's independence? What actually went into that interned? It was a steel and copper made vacuum-filled case into which the document was interned, and then it was put into the Red Fort. That one, sir, was kept a secret. When asked in the parliament, the then education minister apparently said, and I'm reading from the book published by an eminent parliamentarian, Ira Sejian. He puts in his book as to what was the reply given by the education minister then. And I quote, before that, the education minister expressed his inability to disclose the said document. What's the document which is in it? No, I can't disclose. And what did he say? I quote, within the limitations of its compass, it was designed to preserve an authentic record of our time for posterity. Having regard to this concept, the question of contemporaneous publications or laying the text of the document on the table of the House does not arise, unquote. The education minister, while he put the time capsule to be preserved for 5,000 years, does not allow the parliament to know what was inside it. That is 1973, 2 years before the emergency was brought. This kind of an operation in stealth happened, marking 25 years of India's independence, and the parliament should not be informed. That was the line the education minister gives. Even worse, sir, I just want to highlight what was said about Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee in that capsule content. I'd like to say, and I quote from the book, sir, the BJP of Atal Bihari Vajpayee is described as, says the author, and I quote, Jan Sangh People's Party is a militant orthodox Hindu party opposing the concept of secular state, unquote. This is what is being said about Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the capsule, about which they don't say in the House. They didn't say it in the House. Even worse, sir, if that is the record for first 25 years of independent India, which has to be preserved for 5,000 years, look at what has been said. C. Rajagopalachari, there was no reference. There was no reference to C. Rajagopalachari, the first Governor General of this country. To the President of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, had no mention in that content. Dr. Radhakrishnan, Zakir Hussain, and to the Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri, who though short in physical stature, was tall in political stature, who went all the way to Tashkent as a pilgrim of peace to establish harmony in this part of the world. Don't you think this author, who's a parliamentarian, asks, don't you think that such names deserve to be inscribed in the historical document of our country during the period of the first quarter century of Indian independence, unquote. So that's the level of secrecy about even members of parliament, about eminent leaders of different political parties, and sly comments were all packed up in that. Later, it was all removed. So that is the nature of Congress party, sir. I want to highlight that fact. Sir, the names missed out is something which shocks the country, but that was the level to which the party went in the arrogance with which they were trying to rule. So the Constitution and the misuse is what I'm talking about here. Sir, one more thing, again, on the economic impact of such amendments which they bring in. It's a test for every one of us, whether it is one amendment today or another amendment tomorrow. Does it have an economic intent for the larger economic good, social intent, process, constitutional spirit? Let's see. Let's test each one of our acts, the amendments that we bring in, and then decide whether what we are doing is right. Sir, the Soviet model, which the Congress party copied under Prime Minister Nehru, continued with Indira Gandhi, was a model which did not do any good to this country, sir. See Rajagopalachari, the socialism, that socialism was refashioned as Mahal Nobis model, the central command and control structure, the license, quota, Raj, were all part of this. And in that, C. Rajagopalachari writes, sir, to the Prime Minister. He says, in an open letter, he says, Nehru came to Madras on Tuesday with all the paraphernalia of Prime Minister of India and attempted to, in a speech, talk about Rajagopalachari and his principles. But here, in Swarajya magazine, he publishes it in 1962, February 17, and I quote from that article. I want an India clear of the atmosphere of fear in which it is now enveloped, 62, where honest men engaged in difficult tasks of production or trade can carry on their occupation without fear of ruin at the hands of officials, ministers, and party bosses. He says that, I want an India where talent and energy can find scope for play without having to cringe and obtain special individual permission from officials and ministers, and where their efforts will be judged by the open market of India. And so on. He goes on, sir. I want the corruption of this permit license Raj to go. He says that. So a member who was part of the Congress party himself writes to Pandit Nehru saying this cannot go on, your socialism is ruining this country, the license permit Raj could not continue because you are leading to corruption. Sir, periodically Congress questions, hey, BJP, RSS, Jansan, what was your role during the freedom movement? We all know it and we've said it, but I want to ask the Congress, what is your role in the Arctic, India's economic freedom? What is India's economic growth? What is your effort in building economic strength of India? No wonder when we in 21 in our budget, if that is not true, sir, why in 1980 onwards the Congress party itself wants to dump license quota Raj, 91 they want to reform, and then take the claim for it saying we are the ones we reformed. You didn't have to reform if it was so good. It was damaging the Indian economy, and socialism was therefore brought into the Constitution's preamble through the 42nd Act, Amendment Act, only to prove that they are doing right thing. Although that was not needed at all, because the directive principle of state policy has enough and more. And that is where I want to bring this one particular important observation, sir. The Nehru Development Model, written by Arvind Panagaria. Latest book. This will tell you, sir, from an academic perspective also, how the socialism, the control Raj, the license quota Raj of the Congress's 50 years of rule ruined our economy. Though the country did come to terms with its mistake and changed course in 1991, by then it had lost 4 precious decades. Moreover, the history built over these decades continued to haunt its development efforts even after the change of course. For one thing, the base income remained low. Given that the opportunity to grow rapidly had been missed in early decades. Therefore, even an acceleration in growth to 7 to 8% range on a sustained basis could not deliver genuine prosperity for another few decades. Moreover, 4 decades of patronage of socialist ideas and policies came to hardwire Indian politicians, bureaucrats, intellectuals, and even business people in ways that made a swift march to a market economy politically challenging. That's the reality of the policy of the Congress party, which they themselves came, we've reformed the country. They baggaged the country in 50 years, and later they wanted to claim that they are reforming and bringing prosperity to this country, which is not true. So therefore, sir, when Prime Minister Modi gives a call that first of all, sir, with all this socialism, 42nd Amendment to changing the preamble, the much promised Garibi Hatao has not delivered by them. If it's not been delivered by them, what did that socialism do to us? So when Prime Minister Modi says Vikasit Bharat 2047, we all should have to work together to make sure that that is done with all of our responsibilities intact, and such changes to the Constitution which they brought, which has only brought in decay for the Indian economy. I will not get into the details. Another paper from 2009, sir. Cato Institute Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity.
What are we discussing?
Yeah, we are discussing the Constitution and the mistakes done by the Congress party, as a result of which the Indian economy is suffering, sir. Socialism kills. The human cost of delayed economic reform in India, sir. I'll authenticate this and give it to you to show how Congress party's attempts have only weakened the Indian economy. Sir, we changed that by clearly saying that the budget will now very clearly focus on the Indian economy, and as a result of which we will see a lot of economic growth. I'm not getting into the detail of the budget speech 2021, sir, paragraph 86. Those interested can see the thing. Sir, I'll come to this point about the Constituent Assembly, financial inclusion, economic justice. That is why I argued first, saying this declaration in the preamble, bringing socialism, was not warranted at all. There's enough and more said in the directive principle of states policy. Directive principle of state policy is adequate for us to do all the social economic justice related activity. But no, the Congress party was doing it for their political agenda rather than for the larger good. Sir, I like to say, sir, Ambedkar, sir, Dr. Ambedkar says on 19th November 1948, our objective in framing the Constitution is really twofold. Ambedkar says, sir, to lay down the form of political democracy, to lay down that our ideal is economic democracy, and also to prescribe that every government, whatever is in power, shall strive to bring about economic democracy. And a very clear, the directive principle, Dr. Ambedkar says this, the directive principles have a great value, for they lay down that our ideal is economic democracy, unquote. And this is exactly what Prime Minister Modi is doing. 54 crore citizens who once had no means are now being given extraordinary connection to banking. The Jan Dhan Yojana, principles guiding our democracy, equity, justice and opportunity. 50 crore mudra loans, 50 crore mudra loan accounts have created the pathway for micro entrepreneurs, street vendors and so on. Sir, Article 38 of the directive principle says, the state shall strive to promote the welfare of the people by securing and protecting social order, by ensuring socio-economic political justice, and by minimizing inequalities in income, status, facilities, and opportunities. Article 39 also says very similar about adequate means of livelihood and ownership control. Article 46 about scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. So I just want to highlight how, because of the specific actions taken by our government, you find 1969, I go back, sir, for a minute. Mrs. Indira Gandhi on the bank nationalization said, the political situation in our country demands, quote, that banking facilities should be extended in an increasing measure to backward areas, to agriculture, to small-scale industry, and so on. And perhaps banking operations should be informed by a larger social purpose, unquote. But in spite of introducing socialism into the preamble, they did not achieve any of what Mrs. Indira Gandhi justified for bringing nationalization of the banks. They paid only lip service, sir. By 2011, census data reveals that less than 60% of Indian households had access to banking service. Bank accounts, sir, zero balance accounts were only 10.3 crores. By contrast, sir, 54 crore Jan-Dhan accounts have been opened since 2014. 56% of the accounts belong to women. Similarly, pensions, insurance, and so on, sir. PM Mudra, 50 crore sanctioned accounts, 68% are women. Stand Up India, 1 crore SC/ST women borrowers, 30,000 crore has been distributed, 2.5 lakh people, of whom 76% of women are benefiting. PM Swanidhi, sir, 50,000 rupees loan is given to 67 lakh street vendors, of whom 45% are women, 42% are OBCs, and so on. Sir, we repeatedly in Lok Sabha and here spoke about how former Prime Minister said, if I send 1 rupee down, only 15 paisa reaches. By bringing in technology and using DBT, Prime Minister Modi made sure that accounts will receive, the beneficiaries will receive their money directly into their account. 1 rupee means 1 rupee will reach them, and this has helped save 3.48 lakh crores of taxpayers' money. These are very important to say that directive principle of state policy, which has even more things for all of us to do, can bring in poverty alleviation, but not the Nara Garibi Hatao, which delivered nothing on poverty. So lastly, I'll pay my respects to the women who were part of the constitution makers. As I said, 15 out of 385 members were women. I would think you will indulge me when I read the names of these 50 women. Ammu Swaminathan, Annie Mascarenes, Dakshayani Velayudan, Begum Aizaz Razul, Durgabai Deshmukh, Hansa Jivraj Mehta, Kamla Chaudhary, Leela Roy, Malti Chaudhary, Purnima Banerjee, Rajkumari Amrit Kaur, Renuka Ray, Sarojini Naidu, Sucheta Kripalani, and Vijayalakshmi Pandit were the prominent women who were part of the Constituent Assembly, sir. The contribution of these women in the constitution making is immense. I know after that, Pandit Vijayalakshmi Pandit scaled heights in diplomacy. Rajkumari Amit Kaur became the first woman to be a Union Cabinet Minister. Durgabai Deshmukh was the founding member of the Planning Commission. Annie Mascarenes and Renuka Ray served as ministers in their respective state governments. Sarojini Naidu and Sucheta Kripalani went on to become first female governor and chief minister respectively. So I also appreciate the immense role played by the All India Women's Congress, who have done extremely good work, Women's Conference, All India Women's Conference. And these women were all celebrated during Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, which we celebrated from 2022. The last observation I'd like to make, sir, it is very interesting that in this House, the first act that we passed is the reservation for women which was the new act passed in the new parliament. I'd like to reiterate that Bharatiya Janata Party, my party, has always been committed for women and women's participation in politics. Even as early as 1994, in Vadodara National Convention, the BJP very clearly passed that seats must be reserved for women in both parliament and state assemblies. In 1994, sir. Then in 1998, BJP reiterated its commitment for women reservation by introducing it in the Lok Sabha. July 2003, BJP in its national executive in Raipur also passed a resolution to give reservation. 2007, BJP national executive approved 33% reservation for women. 2008 again, BJP amended its constitution so that its own office bearers will have 33% reservation for women, and I'm glad to say that I'm one of the beneficiaries of that reservation. And BJP has consistently supported women's reservation. In Rajya Sabha 2010, sir, I remember late Sri Arun Jaitley supported passionately to pass that, and in Rajya Sabha it was passed. But curiously, why that didn't go to the Lok Sabha, no one knows. And in the Lok Sabha, I think it was for reasons better known, but what was said in the public was some of the alliance partners were not favoring, and therefore the Indian National Congress did not have the courage to take it into the Lok Sabha at that time. BJP's Sankalp Patra of 2014 supported women's reservation. And again, Sankalp Patra before the 2019 election also very clearly supported. But I want to highlight the fact, sir, that in 84-89, Sri Rajiv Gandhi had 426 members in the Lok Sabha and 159 members in the Rajya Sabha. They did not have the conviction to pass the women's reservation bill at that time. Very clearly, they have been anti-women always. Shah Banu case is a very clear example. Sir, I would highlight the fact that although the credit is being taken for the Panchayat Reservation Act by Sri Rahul Gandhi and the dynasty, it was not him. It was P.V. Narasimha Rao who brought it and passed it on. But even then, it was only a lip service because no financial powers were given. Now, Honorable H.D. Deve Gowda ji, who former Prime Minister, is not here, but in 1996, there was during his time, the reservation bill was brought in. Nothing was supported by Congress at that time. Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji in 98, in 99, in 2002, 2003 brought it. No, the Congress wouldn't support. But the Congress's memory is very weak that they didn't support any of the bill all the time, whether it was Deve Gowda ji or whether it was Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. And then in 2008, even Dr. Manmohan Singh faltered. They managed to pass it in Rajya Sabha, which I said a minute ago, but did not go to the Lok Sabha for fear of their alliance partners threatening to walk out of the alliance, and they didn't want to lose power, but they wanted to save their kursi only, and therefore did not do justice to the women. Whereas Prime Minister Modi and BJP, from the beginning, stood by women, made the first change in the party, and brought the reservation bill here. And therefore, if anybody is committed to the Constitution, it is BJP, Prime Minister Modi, and this government. And therefore, people who are walking with the book in their hand, Constitution, sometimes not knowing that inside there are Kora Kagas, nothing printed. They're not even opening it to see whether it is there. But they're walking around with this book, should know that they are the ones who repeatedly have failed the cause of the Constitution of India. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, to accommodate members willing to participate in the discussion,